This happened last year. I was shopping at my local Walmart, just doing some typical shopping on a random weeknight. The store was pretty quiet, and it was probably around 8 or 9 at night. I had been in the store for about 15 minutes or so, and I was in the aisle where they have the fitness items. I was looking at one of those massage guns. I wasn't planning on buying one that day or even buying one at Walmart, but I had been considering getting one. When I walked by, I noticed it and stopped to read the box. I was in the aisle looking at it for a few minutes, and while I was doing so, I remember hearing some voices in the next aisle over. It happened to be in the kids' aisle, and this was at sort of the back corner of the store. I heard a man's voice and then the voice of a child. At first, I paid no attention as I was looking, but soon I heard the man say, "I will buy you this toy if you come with me." I assumed it was the child's father at first, but I didn't really know why he would say that. I couldn't make out what the kid said back to him, but I heard the man then say something like, "Your mom said it's okay." Then I had the crazy thought that maybe this wasn't the child's father. The man started saying, "Come on, let's go," over and over again. I heard him starting to walk to the end of the aisle. I just had a really bad feeling about it. At the time, I didn't know if I was just being nosy or if I should do something. I decided to walk by the aisle and glance down it to see. I left the aisle that I was in and walked into the next one over, which was a toy aisle. When I looked down, I saw a man wearing a black jacket and winter hat holding the hand of a little kid and leading her to the other end of the aisle. Their backs were facing me. I was thinking on the fly and said, "Excuse me," to the guy. He turned around and looked really surprised. I picked up some random toy from the shelf. It was some type of stuffed animal, and said I wanted to ask the man a question about if this would be a good gift for my niece. I then started walking over to them. He said he had no idea, and I said I thought he might know. I then asked if that was his daughter. He said no, that he was just watching her for the moment, but then said they really had to get going. He and the child then walked away. I really wasn't sure if I should believe him or not. Maybe I was making too much of it. I realized it probably was a reasonable explanation and turned to walk in the opposite direction. I was telling myself that nothing was wrong, and I was just paranoid, but I'm not even kidding. About 30 seconds later, I heard a woman's voice calling out a name. For this story, let's just say the name was Sarah. The woman was calling out Sarah, not that loud, but enough for people in the aisles nearby to hear, including me. I walked towards the voice and found the woman a few aisles down and more towards the center of the store. When I reached her, I asked if Sarah was her daughter. She looked concerned and said yes. I had a terrible feeling and said that I might have seen her daughter with a man and thought they might be leaving. We both started sprinting towards the front of the store. The good thing is that this was probably less than a minute since I had seen the man. When we made it to the front of the store, we saw the man and the child at the self-checkout area. He was buying one of the toys for her. The girl's mother started shouting, and the man claimed he was just trying to be nice and buy the toy for the girl, but he quickly tried to run away after realizing nobody would believe that. He ran out the door and was able to momentarily get away. I was just happy that the girl was okay and back with her mother. It turned out that the girl had wandered off from her mother to look at toys while her mom was shopping in another area of the store. The mother had believed that her child was nearby, but she had actually wandered off much further. I also found out that the guy was located not long after this at all. I remember this Walmart near where I live used to be open 24 hours. I think there were a lot of Walmarts that used to stay open around the clock, but most of the ones I've been to in recent years close at like 10 p.m. now. Maybe the reason is because of things happening like the story I'm about to tell you. This was several years ago, probably around 2014. I worked a job back then with all kinds of crazy hours. I never really knew when I'd get off work, and some nights were really late. One time I got off work at close to 3 in the morning. By the time I was done, I was exhausted but also really hungry. On my way home, I stopped at the 24-hour Walmart to see what they had since there were no restaurants nearby that were still open. I was just going to go down the snack aisle. When I got inside, I made my way over to the food section. The store was almost completely empty. I only saw a couple of employees here and there. When I got to the snack aisle, I browsed around for a bit. I wasn't really sure exactly what I was hungry for. I often have a hard time deciding what to eat or where to get food from. I browsed for maybe 5 minutes, and then I had this feeling like I was being watched. It seemed a little strange, and I looked around. When I looked to the far end of the aisle, I saw a man standing there looking towards me. He was a sort of tall and skinny guy wearing a black Adidas sweatshirt. When he saw me looking at him, he just kept standing there. He wasn't looking at anything on the shelves in particular. He looked away from me, but I thought the guy seemed really weird. I went back to looking at the food on the shelves and tried to make up my mind. I wandered into the next aisle over where there was more food. I was there for no more than 10 seconds when I noticed the man creeping around the corner slowly and then looking at me again from the end of the aisle. This was really strange. I grabbed a bag of trail mix and then made my way towards the back of the store along the side. Once I was at the far back corner of the store, I decided to walk back to one of the main walkways. But when I got there, the man was already standing there looking at me. I started walking all around the store and the man seemed to be following me. He kept slowly walking around the store, trailing me wherever I went. It was really frustrating. His face was almost expressionless the entire time, and he never spoke a word. Not going to lie, this really creeped me out to say the least. Finally, I said, forget this, and I went to the checkout area. There was only one checkout lane still open, and I told the cashier that some guy had been following me around the store. The man did not follow me into the checkout, but instead wandered off into the clothing area that was across from the checkout lanes. The cashier just kind of said, thanks for letting us know, and agreed that it was weird. I just wanted to get home, eat something, and go to bed. After I was done checking out, I walked towards the exit doors. I was sure to scan around and make sure that the creepy guy was not once again following me. I was really happy to see that he wasn't. When I made it out the door, I walked through the parking lot to my car. My car was parked a little ways from the doors. It wasn't in the far back end of the parking lot, but it wasn't really that close either. The parking lot was mostly empty, but there were a few cars scattered around, most of which I was guessing were employees. Right as I was starting my engine, I looked up and noticed something. There was a man sprinting at full speed from the Walmart, headed straight for my car. It was the same guy that had been following me around. The way he was running was so fast, like he was running for his life, but he wasn't running away from anything. He was running towards me. There was a second or two where I was so confused that I just watched him. That was until I realized he was going to reach my car very quickly. Then I put my car into drive and got out of there. I pulled away probably just a couple of seconds before he would have reached me. He kept running though, all the way until I was out of the parking lot and on the street. Then I was easily able to get away. I was really confused about who the man was, why he followed me around in the store, and why he had run full speed at me when I was in my car. I guess I'll never know. This story takes place just a few months back. Like usual, I was stopping at Walmart after work. I never get much, just 4 or 5 ingredients usually, and sometimes whatever else I needed as well. I get off work anywhere from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., so I get to Walmart shortly after that each day. This store is usually sort of busy. One day, an employee by the produce area said hi to me. I mentioned this because the next time I was shopping, he said hi to me again when I was in the same area. Looking back, I hadn't really noticed him before because I never really paid attention to the employees. He was bald, had a small dark beard, and was sort of a big guy. He seemed very friendly, and the second time he asked me how my day was going, we made very basic conversation for maybe 30 seconds before I told the man I better go and continue with my shopping. This became a regular thing over the next couple of weeks. Every time I was shopping, this same Walmart employee would say hi and engage in conversation with me. I didn't mind it too much because he was always really nice, although when I was getting ingredients after work, I was anxious to get home and didn't really want to chit-chat. The man started to ask slightly more personal questions each time, like if I was coming home from work, where I worked and where I lived. These questions were starting to weird me out a little bit. I wasn't sure if the man was just a really friendly employee or something else. Told myself he was just a nice guy, and like I said, it didn't really bother me until one time when I was walking through Walmart doing my usual shopping, and he approached me again. He asked me how my day was and the usual questions. Then he asked me for my number. I was nice but told the man no. I was afraid he would get the wrong idea if I said yes. Besides, he should know how weird it sounded. Come to think of it, I never really saw the guy doing any real work. He would always just be standing around and then talk to me. The man seemed offended when I said no. I started to try and explain my reasoning to him, but he just turned and walked away as I started to speak. His whole body language changed. After he walked away, I resumed my shopping. He had gone further into the grocery aisles of the store, but luckily I didn't have to get anything back there. I was inside Walmart shopping for maybe 10 more minutes before checking out and leaving. I remember that day I parked in the back of the parking lot. When I got inside my car, I noticed that the Walmart employee was inside a car not too far away from mine. I really have no idea how I noticed him looking back, but I'm glad that I did. I assumed that he was either on a break or had just gotten off of work for the day. He did not appear to be looking at me, which I was glad to see. I pulled out of my parking space, only to see him pull out and exit the parking lot behind me. I watched in my rearview mirror as he made the same 2 turns that I did to get back to my apartment. About a minute later or so, I was arriving at my apartment complex. I was kind of creeped out now because I was almost positive that this man did not live here. I drove around the parking lot of my complex a little and did not want to go straight to my building. I was really suspicious. The man's car trailed mine the entire time. When I realized that he was probably just going to follow me no matter where I went, I decided to leave. I did not know where I was going, but I needed to get out of there. I drove down the quiet road near the complex to a busier one. Then I signaled to merge onto a busier road. At this hour, that road in particular was really busy because it was almost 5 p.m. now and rush hour. With the man right behind me, I waited for a gap in the traffic. After about 30 seconds, there was one, but I waited until the very last moment and then pulled out. I basically cut off the car that was driving down the road, and there were several other cars behind it. The car honked at me, but the man behind me had no opportunity to merge at all. That allowed me to get away from him. I drove down the road for a very short time before turning. It was then that I had the idea to go back to Walmart. I was fuming with anger. I drove straight back there and went to the customer service counter. When I got there, I told them about how one of their employees had followed me home. This Walmart didn't seem to be the most organized, and they had to call up someone from the produce section to help. When I explained to them what had happened, they told me that nobody of that description works there. I realized that the man must have just put on a blue Walmart vest. Maybe he had worked at a Walmart in the past, or maybe he had just bought the vest online. Either way, he wasn't an employee of the store. I was even more creeped out now. They told me that they would keep an eye out for the man if he returned, which made me feel a tiny bit better, but not a whole lot. After that, I very carefully drove back to my apartment again. Thankfully, I did not see the man or his car. I don't believe he knew which apartment building was mine either. Since that happened a few months ago, I have not seen the man. I also have not been back to that particular Walmart either.